All right, so we opened the show just a moment ago talking about the game earlier today as Colorado and USC played the big noon kickoff game on Fox TV. USC wins 48-41. I think there's a little bit of a concern with that USC defense, a defense that you just need to be good enough to not be mediocre so that Caleb Williams can do his part and basically put you in contention to make the college football playoff. That is not looking very good with the schedule ahead for USC. But then there's the other side of this, Jason, and there's the Colorado perspective. Colorado, with the Pac-12 the way that it is, the point that you brought up earlier, I don't want to say that Colorado is in any way, shape, or form kind of out of the weeds as far as their schedule is concerned, but this was a team that coming into the year, the over-under win total was 3.5 wins. They were a 21-point underdog to open the season. They beat TCU. They beat Nebraska. They start out 3-0. But even in loss today, Jason, I think there were a lot of positives as, again, they put up over 500, closer to 600 yards of total offense, including close to 200 yards rushing. Before we talk about it, I do want to hear a little bit of what Coach Prime Deion Sanders had to say about his team's performance after the game.
If you can't see what's coming with CU football, you've lost your mind. You're just a flat-out hater if you can't see what's going on and what's going to transpire over the next several months. Something's wrong with you.
So that was Deion Sanders after the game. And, Jason, I actually happen to agree with him. Again, this was a team with an over-under win total of 3.5. Over the next 2 weeks, they play what are on paper the two worst teams in this league, Arizona State and Stanford. They're a combined 2-8 overall, 0-4 in the 0-5, in the Pac-12. Stanford actually got destroyed by USC just a few weeks ago. And I think not only was it a close loss, but there were a lot of positives, including Amarion Miller, a 4-star freshman, one of the highest-rated players that Deion Sanders signed in his initial class, was put in the game, 7 catches, 196 yards, and 1 touchdown. And, oh, by the way, in theory, you should get a little bit healthier over these next couple weeks. Shiloh Sanders, the starting safety, was out. Travis Hunter, we know, was out. So I got to give Deion Sanders credit. His team fought. His team battled. They're probably going to get healthy over the next couple weeks. They hit a little bit of a soft spot in the schedule, and I agree with everything that he said after this game.
He's 100% right. You can add me to the same chorus. I think that because it's Deion and because I think there's been some hyperbole on both sides. I've heard national people talk about it, and I kind of want to see him get beat. And then there's been the opposite, and there's been the coverage, and there's been the TV ratings. But what we got to remember is this is a work in progress. This is an incomplete football team right now, and we know that. They're supposed to get beat by USC.
Yep.
They're supposed to get beat by Oregon. They're supposed to get beat by TCU. Guess what? They didn't. They've won 3 games. They're already ahead of schedule. He's exactly right. And he said this last week after Oregon, we're never going to be this bad again. It's like, yeah, you better beat them right now because they are coming. I don't know what the ceiling turns out to be. I think it depends on how long Deion wants to be there. But he's going to be bringing in more talent. It's clear they're well coached. I think they've been coached to a degree. I think the entire staff has done a really nice job of getting them ready to play for the most part. And I don't think they've made excuses. They didn't make excuses at Oregon last week. They didn't make excuses here. What Deion is saying is 1,000% true, and he is also, I think, speaking to the next crop of potential Colorado recruits and saying, yeah, come be a part of this because you see where it's going. And it's the same thing. Like, watching this game, you're supposed to get beat by USC by a lot more than this, especially considering the injuries that you mentioned. But Colorado just continues to show. Oregon's really good. They just are. And that was an environment that was going to be impossible for them, and it turned out to be. But for Deion to not make excuses for the loss, but say, if you can't see what's happening here, you're out of your mind or you're a hater, I think that's exactly right. Anybody that is not saying, man, this is something to watch, and boy, it's going to look special in the future. We don't know absolutely for certain, but it certainly feels that way. I agree with them. I think you do have to be a blind hater or somebody that's just coming out to have a take at this point in time to say anything other than this has been successful. It's an incomplete unit right now, and it's going to be potentially frightening, but it's going to be fun to watch once it's fully formed.
You know what I like what he did today is, I don't know if you caught this during the week, but there was a little bit of a backlash. He made some comments about a 5-star freshman named Cormani McClain. He was the top-rated recruit in the last class, the first class that he signed, and he's a cornerback. And with Travis Hunter hurt, he was asked why Cormani McClain wasn't playing, and he basically said, like, he's not preparing right, he's not showing up ready to play, whatever. And there was a little bit of backlash to Deion, to Coach Prime, for the comments. Some people thought he shouldn't be airing this stuff out publicly. I had no problem with it, whatever. Why I bring it up, the kid Cormani McClain did play today. He actually played very well, broke up a touchdown in the end zone, had an interception that was ultimately called back because of a penalty on the play. You add him in with the Amarion Miller kid, who had, as I said, 7 catches, whatever it was. I just put down the stats. 7 catches, 196 yards, 1 touchdown. I'm not saying you should play guys that haven't earned that opportunity, but I also do think in a rebuilding type year like this, if a guy has pseudo-earned the opportunity, put him in and see what they can do. And I think that's what Deion did today. Was he said, you know what? You guys have been, you guys were stars in high school. You might not totally be ready, but your upside is through the roof. I don't want to say that he gave up on winning the game, but they were down by a lot, and he just said, I want to see what you guys have. And I love that approach, and I love that philosophy, because all it's going to do is build depth, build experience, and then when a Travis Hunter does come back, when some of the injured guys do come back, it just creates more depth overall. So I really like that move by Deion to get some of those younger guys some experience. And I just really like the fight in that team in the second half. Obviously, I understand there's no moral victories in college sports, and this is, a professionalized whatever. It is essentially professional sports. But man, oh man, like to battle back the way that they did, and to put themselves back in that game. I just think you have a lot of momentum, and then I think, again, it goes back to what you and I have talked about even during the high times of the 3-0 start, which was the goal isn't to win a national championship. The goal isn't to make the college football playoff. The goal is, frankly, get to 6-6, exceed everybody's expectations, go to a bowl game, get that extra month of practice, and then recruit your butt off. And so they didn't win today, but I think you can see the pathway with 2 manageable games over the next couple weeks, and then obviously over the back half of the season, if you can win those 2 games, you got to go whatever it would be, 1-5 down the stretch to get to 6-6, get to that bowl game. That's what stood out to me today. A lot of those young guys got reps, but more importantly, they are back on, again, and I know there's no such thing as moral victories. I get all that, but they're back on that trajectory. Get to 6-6, go to a bowl game, build some momentum, and then recruit your butt off, because, as you said, Jason, talent is definitely coming once recruiting ramps up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about Cormani McClain and some of the younger guys, because it feels like, Deion's kind of having to balance playing checkers and chess. Checkers is the game in front of you. Chess is the long game. And when you look at Colorado, you are looking more at the long game. Now, they've already done some things and won a few rounds of checkers and knocked a few people off along the way, but he's looking down the line. The point about depth is well taken. You get these guys some game reps right now. They're not going to be nearly as wide-eyed like deer in headlights when they're out there for real, or when, the first string's back and they're not out there as often. He's having to balance the game in front of him with getting guys ready for the future, seeing what's there. I think he's taking a really interesting approach, but I think that he's in an interesting situation because of the job that he took, and as a result, this is the kind of thing you have to do. I remember, because I'm in Nashville, Vanderbilt, there's always talk from some of the fans here in Nashville that will always say, can we just get somebody that runs a triple option? Can we just do something completely crazy? It worked for Georgia Tech for a time. It's always annoying to play Navy. Like, if we can't compete and just recruit on the same line, then can we do something unique that makes it a little bit different? Well, Colorado's situation is unique, and Deion is treating it kind of as both a present but also as a future. And I think that because it's Colorado, that makes all the sense in the world.
100%. And lastly, and then we'll get to the Sager, is I do think, everybody has to keep that perspective of listen, you don't want to put on games. Nobody's saying that they're trying to lose, or that they're okay with losing. but like this whole idea coming out of last week, and it wasn't something that you and I kind of dabbled in with our commentary, but it's like, oh, wow, they were overrated. It's like, no, they're actually totally properly rated, and
Yes.
if anything, they have have they been maybe over talked about? Well, that's up to you. I mean, we're talking about them because people are interested in hearing about them, but are they overrated? No. They were projected to win 3.5 games. They're 3-2 now, and just played what is on paper a top 10 team, to a near upset. And so, again, this is such a bigger rebuild than I think because they started 3-0. This is still such a bigger rebuild than people realize. Like, Deion didn't bring in 65 or 70 new players or whatever it was because he wanted to, because it was fun. It was because they were literally by far the worst Power 5 team in college football last year. And so, again, for people, that I don't know if you want to see them fail or whatever, however you want to term it. Oh, they're overrated. They're this, they're that. No, they're completely properly rated at 3-2, and they have overachieved so far this season. They do lose today, but I think there's a lot of positives to take out of this.